Hey guys, so now we're in Lightroom. I've imported all the images and I'm going to go through and I'm going to flag the ones that I want. If you guys don't know what flagging is, I'm basically hitting P and then this little white flag comes up on the corner and then it basically means that I picked that image. So I'm going to go through all these images and select the ones that are in focus and select the ones that I think Mom would love. So I'm going to go through that really quick. So we're going to take a quick look at the metadata, and this is basically where all the information of the image is. So it's at ISO 640, it's shot with a 50mm lens, and the exposure is 1/200 second at f2.0, and then basically my lens information is down there and all that fun stuff. So if you saw in the previous section of the video, then you saw that the lighting kept changing. It was very blue in the beginning and then started warming up, so you basically have to alter that in post as well. And I mean, I was shooting almost at 10,000K at some point, and so yeah, if you're shooting natural light, it's very tricky. It does change a lot, but you'll get used to it. Alright guys, so now that I flagged all of them and I pressed the little flag filter down there, it's going to show me just the ones that I wanted. And this is a good time to kind of deselect some that you're kind of not very happy with, or that you're like, you know, there's a better image kind of similar to that. So that's why I go through first, and then afterwards, after I do all of that, I end up in the Develop tab up on the right hand side. And that's where you do your edits. So see how this one's out of focus and then the hair is in focus but his little face isn't. So I take that one away. And we're basically just looking and making sure that everything is in focus. And Mama's hand doesn't bother me. We can edit that in post. And again, if you look at these are way more magenta than the previous ones, and then they're going to get really cold. So it's so funny. And then yeah, no cropping of the limbs, things like that. I cropped his little toes, but I don't mind it too much. And this one's kind of out of focus, but his face is too cute to like even not give it to Mom. So we're gonna go through all of these. And I know this is like the hardest part when you're a child photographer, because you kind of want to give them everything, but you just have to remember that you're editing them, and you know, parents aren't going to post every single one on their walls, so you just got to choose the best ones. Okay, now on our Develop tab, we're going to increase the exposure, the temperature, and the tint. And let's look at our before and after. So this is our before and our after. And we do have a little bit of grain, but that's okay. To make this 1,000 times easier on myself, I'm going to go in and use a preset that I have already created for my studio. Basically, all I have to do is, if it looks a little wonky, I just change the temperature or the tint, and then that's it. But for this one, I am just clicking around, seeing what works, and we'll just let it be. Usually I will click around for a couple minutes, and from there I'll just kind of figure out which one looks best for the whole session and kind of keep it that way. So here we can see that there's cyan in his eyes, which is actually not supposed to be there, obviously, and from there we're just desaturating it. What we're going to do now is just drop the highlights and drop the shadows and increase the blacks. And I'm going to show you guys why I use that vignette. This is right here, this is without it, and that's with it. So basically it makes everything airier. And then I'm gonna try to bring down the yellows and playing with the colors. But besides that, I think it's good to go. So in the Hsl panel, I'm basically just editing the specific colors that are noted. So red, orange, yellow, green, aqua, blue, purple, and magenta. And here I'm just using the sliders to move it around and seeing what kind of color I want for those specific things. And we are going to turn it over a little and see if there's anything funky going on in the skin tones. This is usually where I edit the skin tones the most, and kind of make sure that everything looks good and everything is kind of the color I want it to be. And Hsl is probably the most important thing in Lightroom, honestly, besides curves. So if you play with the luminance, you basically bring back that color. You make sure that it's not too white, not too bleached out. And then the saturation is obviously just saturation. Down here, we're going to be looking at the color calibration, so from your camera. And what I like to do is I like to play with these sliders and try to get the most accurate kind of color profile that I can, if that makes any sense. So these are my two main things that I work on. So if we bring back the yellows, which white tends to have predominantly yellows and greens, then that will bring down the lightness of that image. Now, if you feel like your image is kind of losing some kind of depth, what I do suggest is going and playing again with the shadows here. But what you can also do is come down to the tone curve and actually pull up your darks and mess with your shadows here, and it kind of adds a different kind of layer to it. So that's our before and that's our after. And we can bring down even our whites, even though sometimes I love to clip my whites. I know that's so bad, but like it looks so good on skin. So you can bring them down, and then this little curve, I have it high, that way my whites are kind of almost at a pure white, but they're not clipped. So if you look at the histogram, it's not like giving me a warning sign up there or anything. So I just like to toggle back and forth, make sure everything's okay, and then I copy it. So I just press Command C, and then I copy everything, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm gonna paste this over to the next image. It just depends if this image is kind of somewhat similar. This one is a lot lighter, so if I darken it, it should be okay when I paste it. But unless you alter the exposure too, what I mean by that is when you copy it, you're gonna get the option to check all, and then I should have not checked the exposure part, because then it's gonna basically make it bright. See what I mean? So I'm just bringing that down, and everything that we did to the previous image is now on this new image, and it just saves so much time. So that's the before and that's the after, and then we click OK, we Command copy, and then go to the next one. So if we're happy with how this looks, we just leave it as is. But if we need to make small little tweaks, because again, natural light does change very quickly, I just like to make sure that everything is alright, and that the colors aren't super wonky or anything, and that my highlights aren't too blown. So I just go in and I just make sure that, you know, nothing's too different. And yeah. And then we just try to move on to the next image, and then the next image. But like we did have this day specifically, it was very, very blue, then cold. Like, see what I mean? Now I have to bring up my exposure here. So it's just, that's the only like little minute differences that we are going to have to go through and do through this whole gallery. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this part up, and you'll see right now, as I turn this up, you're gonna see a bit of orange and green coming through. So what I'm actually doing is I'm gonna bring this up a little, and that's the before and the after for that. And then it's actually even too bright, so I'm gonna have to mess with the curves. So you'll see. And again, this is literally what happens to every single gallery. So don't be frustrated. Don't worry if, you know, if you copy and paste and it doesn't look exactly the same. Unless you're using Flash or you're using something that's very static and that has the same exact temperature, same exact lighting scenario, and has it basically the whole thing can't change, then you can probably just go ahead and sync everything. But for this, I have to go through everything. It was just a really wonky day with lighting coming in and out. It was spotted clouds and stuff, so I'm just trying to make sure that the lighting is okay. But yeah, so just make sure that your lights aren't blown out. And again, I always shoot raw, so these images are very easy to recover. And then again, just copy, paste, copy, paste. So this one, I'm going to try to paste all of these. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to sync settings right there. It's Shift Command S. I'll show you right now since I'm apparently toggling back and forth between the photo and the settings. So this one right here. And then we're going to synchronize. So that first image, since it's already edited, it's going to edit every subsequent image from there. But what I didn't notice is that I had a completely different lighting scenario. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect that first image, select that image, and then go ahead and bring down the exposure and select again those similar, the similar exposure or like same lighting scenario images, and sync again, if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So I'm just holding shift and then I'm clicking on the last image that I want, and I'm making sure that everything is okay. I do like this little trick where you go to noise reduction and then you bring the luminance up just a bit just to get rid of like noise on the skin. And then we're gonna go to settings again and sync settings and then synchronize. And that's basically gonna apply it all through all those images. So essentially, if I click through, they should all look exactly the same temperature and editing wise. So I'm just clicking through and making sure. But yeah, that's how you basically edit 13 images within seconds. Alright guys, so I did notice that I had a little bit too much red in the images, so I did go back and I changed in the hue saturation a bit of the red to orange and lightened it just a smidge. But besides that, it's all back to normal. So for these, I'm gonna try to paste again and see if that works, and it did. So that's awesome. Now I'm going to go ahead and edit this outlet out. So you're gonna click that little healing brush right there, and then you're gonna click on it and drag it over to a clean spot, and it's basically working as how Photoshop's healing patch tool does. And that's basically it. Like, you just clean it up. I don't know how else to explain it. It's pretty easy. I like to do this for like really simple things. Like if someone has like a ton of acne or something like that, obviously I'm not gonna go through and do that step like through the whole face. This is definitely something just for like small little detail changes, and it works fine. So I'm just going through and I'm just going to change the lighting, and that's it for basically like the standard editing part. Alright guys, I'm just going to speed through this and do the little tips and tricks that I showed you guys and edit that way. And then I will show you something really cool right now. So like I said, something really cool that I learned back when I started using Lightroom is that if you try to use the black and white here, it's gonna relate to the red and white, I mean the RGB down below. But if you use saturation, it gives you more of that airy feel. So I always suggest using desaturating your image to do black and white versus like clicking the black and white. So yeah, I'm just gonna go again and go through these and finish them off. So just a quick little thing, I do cropping at the very end, and the straightening, and when I use straightening I use the angle ruler and I click from one end to the other so I know I have a perfect straight line. But besides that, that's it. Okay, now that we're done, we're going to go ahead and look at the before and the afters. So let's look at our before and our after. I love looking at before and afters because I feel like every single person that looks at my work thinks that it comes out like this, and I'm like, no, there's a lot of post-editing stuff going on. So we just basically made it a little bit warmer, a little bit more lively. That one's probably the most dramatic out of most of them. Oh no, that one is probably, yeah. So yeah, definitely the most dramatic out of the two. I mean, out of everything. So we're pretty happy with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this little grid here, and I'm going to select all of these. These are all of the images that I'm going to give Mom. So select all, and then export, and then we are going to select a folder. So as for folders go, I like to choose my desktop so I know exactly where they're getting exported to. You can use like an external hard drive, but you don't have to. And then put it in subfolder, and then I'm going to name it John Milestone, and we're going to go ahead and hit export, and then it's going to export 52 files, and then it's just going to have like the loading bar there, and then that's it.